Joe.
When
Okay.
the names have to be given, what happens if someone has more than one name, or they change their name, or they have a nickname?
For the get.
To a Kabbalah guy.
For the get or for the signatures?
For the get.
Okay, so a get, that's a whole different sugya. There's a whole Mishnah on it. It's actually, I think it's at the top of the page that we're on, which is I think it's the page that the Mishnah was on. You have to write all the names and all the nicknames and the city they're from and the nicknames of the city and everything. All of that has to be written in the get so that there's no lack of clarity about who this person was. And yeah, that's a big issue with get. Yes, that is true. I'm glad you asked because there were some questions that people wrote in the chat in the beginning and I wrote down for myself that I wanted to address them, but I forgot. So now I don't remember them anymore. Where did I write it? I don't know, but I can look back at the chat. I know you asked that question.
Yeah,
so that's something else that I wanted to address. 1 second.
Well, this is not a question, but I just want to say I love.
I guess I really covered it. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. What do you want to say?
I said it's not a question, but I just wanted to say I love doing the punctuation.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
I have a question. So if these rabbis could not sign their name and they had to write a sign or a letter, then how can they write, I am a witness, or how can they be writing letters to other people?
So I don't think it's that they couldn't. I think they chose to use pictures instead. It was their symbol. I think I don't think it was that they couldn't write. Yeah. And it could be people couldn't write necessarily and they just wrote aid. It could be aid, at least they could write, but not more than that. It's not clear. I mean, I'm not convinced that what Saul Lieberman writes is true and that that's the reason why they did this. I'm not convinced. It's his theory. Whether it was all because people were illiterate or not is a good question. I wanted to bring it because I thought it was interesting that he addressed it, but it's possible for other reasons. To us, it seems so strange, but again, it's all part of your culture and what's normally done. And it could be, it was just common. People wrote, I'm an aide. And there you have witnesses. Again, I think if you view it in small town, I think it makes a lot more sense because then signatures and people's handwritings is much more identifiable.
Also today we use emoticons and those sorts of things to represent multiple sorts of emotions or responses and things. So in some ways it sort of fits into that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
According
Laura, you had a question before. You were trying to say something? Laura, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question that you had said from Tosafot that if they had signatures on the document and they couldn't find the people who had witnessed the transmission of the document, that they could go back and say, well, as long as it was signed, it was fine. But that assumes that it wasn't signed at the same time, that it was signed at the same time it was transmitted. But actually, you could have signed it, that you'd seen the husband create the document, and it could be given at some completely different time, and it would be totally useless.
Right. It's definitely a weakness in Tosfot's approach. I agree with you, because he assumes. But again, maybe that's the way it worked in his day, which is the witness is signed maybe at the moment the get was being given, which again, it's not so clear that's the way it worked. But you would have to assume somehow that it must have happened very close to the giving up. The witnesses wouldn't sign unless they knew that the get was being given to her. That's his theory. It's what the strength of his approach is that it keeps Rabbi Lazars true to his approach, that Eidei Mesira are critical, and you can't have a Tikun Olam that basically overrides the Torah law. That's why he's so insistent on saying that. But there is a weakness because it does seem like the signatures would happen if you have a timeline, it would happen before the passing over of it. And that's definitely a weakness in his approach. But you can see why he's motivated to say what he is, because he can't fathom. And again, this is why commentaries are all based on everyone's view of how to understand something. He just can't fathom that if the Torah law requires Eidei Mesira and the Eidei Mesira affects the get, then there's no way that you could have Eidei Hatimah without Eidei Mesira. So he comes up with a creative solution, which has a weakness, as you're pointing out. That's exactly what you do when you learn and you think about it and you say, well, does this fit all the criteria, right? My favorite line always in learning is to say, if there was one easy answer, then there'd be one easy answer. And everybody's argument must have a weakness to it. Otherwise, everybody would agree with it. So the part of the process in learning is to come up with the difficulties with each approach. What's the weakness? Okay, which you've done, which is great. Okay, Becky, you wanted to ask something.
I was curious. Rabbi Lazars didn't believe in Hatimah at all. He only believed in Mesirah.
It depends if you're the Rif or the Tosfot and how you understand Rabbi Lazars. The Rif said it's either or.
Right.
But no, he didn't think you needed signatures according to the simple reading of Rabbi Lazars and according to the way Tosfot understands.
Okay. So he really didn't think you needed signatures.
He, like Rashi said, it's not tova. It's better, but you don't really need it because again, the Torah says vikatav v'natan. It's the writing of it and the giving of it. Who says you need witnesses to sign? You need witnesses to watch the divorce happen. Because what's the purpose of witnesses on a document? To prove that it actually happened, but that's not what he needs the witnesses for. He thinks the witnesses are actually affecting the divorce. Again, depending on who you read. According to the Rif, maybe not. But according to Tosfot and the way we understood it originally, it seemed like he's saying it affects the divorce. Okay.
For any land, business, like any land, like we saw in the Navi, those need adim. Any land transactions.
So again, I could sell you property and not have adim. What does it mean it needs? Now, if I want to validate it and you claim, oh, I don't remember what I just said, but I sold you land and then I claimed it's mine and you try to prove it. If you don't have signatures, you're going to have a hard time proving it. So again, is there a Torah law that you have to? There's no Torah law that you have to write a document when you sell property. It's just that's the way to protect yourself as a buyer.
So it's the Eitzat Tova approach.
Right, exactly. What they used, the way I understood the pasuk in Yirmiyahu was a way of saying that when the Torah said v'katav, there's no ktiva without Hatimah. In other words, those two things go hand in hand. So when the Torah said v'katav and you write it, what they really meant was write it and sign it. As you see in Yirmiyahu, he says write it and sign it. Those two things are almost synonymous. That's how I understood their method of proof.
So that is the final takana. What is the law? What is the halakha today? The final takana is you have to have edim to witness the mesirah, and also edim, the same edim or different edim to do the Hatimah.
That's a good question. I don't know halakha lamas. Oh, I know. We paskin like Rabbi Lazars. So, but again, according to who do we paskin? Rabbi Lazars. We paskin actually the edim mesirah karte, that it's critical that you have the edim mesirah. So I assume that means that with Rabbi Lazars and the Tikun Olam, you need both basically. Yeah. You need Eidei Mesirah and you need Eidei Hatimah. If you end up in a situation where you can't find the Eidei Mesirah, you could prove your get using your Eidei Hatimah. But you need both. We hold like Rabbi Lazars on this issue. So you actually need both. Yeah.
I guess
I didn't know that, similar, but I realized I did know it. Yes.
I guess it's similar, like when people get married in Israel, they have to go through some kind of to the Rabbanut to prove that they're a bachelor.
Yeah.
Right. And they have to bring witnesses to prove that. But they don't have, I don't believe they have to sign a document. They just need to verbalize it.
No, right. That's a little different because that's not someone who's married and proving they're divorced. But if you go to the Rabbanut and you've been married before, then you definitely have to go prove that you're divorced and you have to show them you have a kosher divorce and, up to their standards. I've known situations where people didn't have divorces that were up to their standards and they made them do another divorce or things like that. It's very complicated.
But I thought that the bachelor witnesses had to attest to the fact that this person was not.
Yes, they have to attest to the fact that the person's single, but it's enough that they just say it. That's fine. They don't have to sign anything, I don't think.
Right.
I thought they did have to sign.
Do the witnesses have to be separate?
Huh? May I say something?
You need two sets of witnesses, or can they be one set that does both?
For the divorce and I think it could be the same set. For the Eidei Hatimah and Eidei Mesirah, I don't see why you can't have the same set.
May I just say a private comment to someone else? Is that possible? Becky,
Yes,
I sent you a
relevant.
message. That's all I wanted to say. Okay.
Oh, where?
Okay, any other questions?
This was a complicated Gemara.
It was complicated. That's why I pushed it off to the last week. I was debating whether to do it or not, but it's an interesting topic. And I also, one of the reasons I wanted to teach it was because Rabbi Lazars and Rabbi Meir, this machloket of Eidi Masir, Eidi Hatimah, as I said, comes up in Sugiyot all over Gittin. It's a really basic machloket in the Masechet. And I thought if we're learning Gittin and we're learning about, we should at least see this. And sometimes it's good to get basic knowledge because anyone who learns Gittin knows about this machloket. So I like to get you up on basic information, and it's interesting, and it fit in with our theme of the Tikun Olam and things changing and how. And so, yeah, but it was a little complicated.
Rabbanit Farber, where do we go to from here?
Where do you go to from here?
Yeah.
So again, my advice always is if you live in a place where you have a regular weekly Gemara shiur that's available to you and an option to learn at a local shiur, I recommend that you go or find a chavruta and try to learn together. You can take our courses. If you didn't take our Psachim course, so there's a 10-week course from last year,
right? You
can take that and do that on your own. You can review the material that you learned. That's also very helpful. You can learn Daf Yomi, which will just get you getting into the rhythm of the learning. And, we'll try to have more courses as time goes on, and as we just can't do it all the time, but we will try to have more courses in the future. So join our future courses. And there's other courses out there. So try to find other opportunities, even online, if you don't live in a place where there's a local class. It's always great if you have a local class and then you can really sit in chavruta and there's someone there, you can always just stop them and ask them. And that's really ideal. You can also try to find someone learned in your neighborhood who will do a chavruta with you, who can work with you on Gemara. There's all kinds of possibilities of learning.
You can also select a Masechet and learn it slowly on our website.
Right. All the materials are basically up there.
But whatever you choose, you could just get started, start from page 2, which is the first page, and then go from there.
Yeah. So on our site, you can basically find any page you want in the Gemara. There's maybe a few missing here and there, but for the most part, most of them have shiurim on them. And you can just go at your own pace, at your own order, with Masechet that the topic interests you. There's a lot of possibilities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was wonderful.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Thank you. Rabbanit Michelle, are you doing another course soon, I hope?
So I don't have one planned yet, but I will do one at some point. So far, it's been one a year. We'll see if I can pull off more than that. I'm not committing yet to, I'd like to say when it's like after you just have a baby, you're not ready to have the next one yet. So, it takes a lot of time and effort. So, I'll definitely do them. It's just a matter of balancing all the things that we're trying to do and make sure we have time to do other things as well. So.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it.
But I definitely will. So it's just a matter of whether we'll be able to do another one this year or next year. Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to say
thank you very much. Wonderful.
I was going to put in a plug for the Daf Yomi because the more you learn, the more you recognize when you see it later on. And so it's extremely helpful just as background.
Yeah. And having it every day, it's, most people, look, the ideal would be to go to a Gemara class every day, but most people don't have the time to do that, an in-depth. But if you do Daf Yomi, which is basically committing yourself to 45 minutes a day, or if you do it at faster speed, you could even do it in less time a day, then it becomes part of your routine. And even though it's spoon-fed and it's not the same as this, but you do just hear it, it becomes music to your ears, you're familiar with it. It helps you. I would say the combination of the two is very useful.
It's hard enough for me personally to keep up with Daf Yomi.
Yeah, that's definitely, I hear that. It's not a simple task, but it is doable, and many, many women have been doing it. So it is doable, but it is challenging. I'll give you that.
Thank you, Rabbanit Michelle.
All right, guys.
Thank you,
Michelle go
everyone.
to sleep. She has to be up soon.
Well, good night. Thank you
Have a good
all.
night, everyone, or a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Great. I love meeting you more each time, and it's really nice.